want to welcome everybody to Under the Hood. This is the last podcast of the year. We're going on over 2 years, 2.5 years, and delighted to have a fabulous guest today. And we sponsor Mastery Under Pressure sponsors this podcast. And what we've learned is that patterns that are created in childhood many times impact us as grown-ups. So we're talking a little bit today about conflict. So there's inner conflict. It's everywhere, just absolutely everywhere. Inner conflict, outer conflict, relationships, families, countries. And I still come back from the premise that these patterns that are created in childhood impact us as grown-ups at every single level. And so we're going to welcome today one of our world travelers. And Andrew has a lot of really wonderful things to share with us. And I'm going to read you a little bit about him. Andrew Miller has been fortunate enough to live and work on four continents in the last 25 years, including his earlier home base in Hong Kong for more than 2 decades. He was one of America's first undergrad students in China in the 1980s, where he started his entrepreneurial career. He's worked across a variety of roles in both large global companies and startups, sales, bag carrying quota guy, sales and organizational management, business development, strategy, product development, marketing channels, international, and P&L management. He received his BA from Lewis and Clark College in Portland and an MBA from Middlebury College, right? In Vermont. Am I correct?
In Monterey, California.
Monterey, California. Okay. Institute of International Studies. So welcome, Andrew. And our guests that are kind of going to listen to this afterwards, and our guest that's here live. And so,
Thank you
since I
so
mentioned
much,
it a
Tina.
couple,
Really, that's a very kind intro. I'm humbled and delighted to be with you. Really excited to chat.
awesome. All right. So we talked a little bit about this, and I mentioned it a couple times. So tell us a little bit about your family of origin, your background. Yeah, just a little bit about that.
Yeah. So born and raised in New York.
I
Hit
didn't know
from
that.
Long Island.
I didn't know that.
Um,
Yeah.
yes, yeah. Born in 61. Very,
Okay.
very classic middle class suburb just outside of the city. Um, with parents and grandparents from Northern Europe. My
Hmm.
dad's side, largely from Russia.
Hmm.
Mom's dad from Germany. Mom's mother from Czechoslovakia. By the time World War II had broken out, my dad's family was already in the U.S., but my mom's
Hmm.
family was not.
Hmm.
They were very fortunate to leave Germany just
Oh,
18 months before
wow.
the
Wow.
invasion of Poland. And I know of our history that my grandfather had lost two sisters and a couple of cousins in
Hmm.
Auschwitz. It's not something that we in our family usually talk about or identify
Hmm.
with, but it's a big part of history. But they left Germany to South America. My mother was born in London along the way,
Interesting.
and they rebuilt their lives in Buenos Aires in
Hmm.
the hides, tanning, leather business.
Wow.
Um, and that's how my mother and father met. It was kind of a forced marriage. No, I shouldn't quite use the word forced. It was arranged.
Arranged. That's the word.
My
Right.
Encouraged.
father,
It was
my
encouraged.
father and his father and all the family up in New England and Maine, they were in the shoe business. And my mother's father in the hides and tanning business. So
Interesting.
they were doing business with each other.
Yes.
And that's how my mother and father met. So yeah, um, uh, kind of classic, as I say, middle class upbringing, riding bicycles to school. There,
Mm.
uh, great childhood on the one hand, and then very difficult on the other. My parents got divorced when I was 12, which was a big, big, big
Mm.
shock to me
Wow.
because it was the last thing I ever expected. I didn't
Mm.
know what was going on underneath the surface. So when
Mm,
that news broke, it hit me really hard, and patterns that have
right.
evolved. There's a lot of there's some patterns that I think really go back to those days as a kid. Um, but
Like what? Can you tell us
um,
specifically?
Resiliency, um, emotion, the my ability to really go deep and tap into like my inner self and emotion
Mhm, mhm.
um, doesn't come naturally to me.
I don't know
Uh,
that it comes naturally to a lot of people. That's not unusual, actually, and that's kind of why we do the work that we do is to help people kind of make those connections, the head
yeah,
and the heart.
yeah,
So perhaps, and particularly in our culture, in
yes,
Western culture, logic is much more appreciated and talked about, and especially for boys. So
I,
not unusual, Andrew.
yeah. No, I think I'm definitely a product of that mold.
Hmm.
Not only uh, growing up at that time in history, uh,
Hmm.
but also with our family circumstances. So
Right. And your parents were also first generation Americans. And I
my
think
mother, my
your
mother
mother
was,
was
yes,
first generation American, right?
yes.
So how did that, and that really is something we don't again talk about a lot, but how did that impact, do you think, your upbringing?
It was very, that move for her was very difficult.
Hmm.
Growing up in Buenos Aires in a family of kind of a well-to-do family in South
Hmm.
America, and then moving to Auburn, Maine,
Wow.
where near the shoe factories
Wow,
of
that's right.
my father and the business. And it was very, very difficult. So soon after I was born, the story has it that my, my mother actually said to my dad that uh, if this is going to last, we need to leave Maine. And
Hmm.
that's when they moved to New York.
Wow,
So,
interesting.
yeah,
From Germany to Buenos Aires to
to Auburn, Maine, a
Auburn, Maine,
population of who knows how many, maybe a few hundred, a
right?
couple of thousand people, and a shoe town, a factory town.
And probably no Jews.
Other than my family, not that many.
Right, right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
then she moved to New York, and so for you, the resiliency, um, that was the good news, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What other traits did you learn, do you think?
Um, I um I have a relationship with money that is the plus side is a high degree of financial acumen, and I count pennies. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that that is a function of seeing some boom bust cycles in my
Hmm.
family on both sides growing
Hmm.
up, where um, when I was like one of my earliest memories to see my grandfather on my dad's side,
Hmm.
extremely elegant man who drove a Rolls Royce
Hmm.
in the early 60s.
Wow.
And 10 years later, bankrupt.
There you go.
Yeah, lost everything. Um,
Wow.
and similar situation on my mother's side, a very, very vibrant business in the early 60s, and ten years later, um, almost nothing. So
Well,
I think that that had a big influence on me.
I would think.
So I have I don't even know what you call it, but it is, I feel there is, have a certain relationship with capital, with money, with being frugal and very conscious of
Right.
how it comes in and how it goes out.
Yes. Yes. And coming from, again, from what you're describing, money, I always, money has no emotion.
Hmm.
Money is just a commodity. It's just a trade. I trade this for that, but we bring the emotion to it. All the family stories, and it's really our relationship with money is has a very big psychological underpinning.
It does. There have been times in
Yes.
my life that, I've lost sleep. I feel a level of anxiety and a level of stress over, the certain periods of time when things have been very, very difficult. And
Hmm.
it that has caused health problems and stress. So
Yes.
uh, I'm aware of that, and I've tried to focus on changing my
Right. Right.
relationship with money.
From scarcity to abundance, as we say in the
Yes, yes,
spiritual world.
no,
Yes,
yes,
it's a
yes.
whole different mindset. It's a complete different mindset.
This is there's a lot of truth to that, and I do
Yes.
believe that, and I see it when my relationship has changed, and I um, have loosened my grip on money. It actually has flowed in and out,
Yes.
and
Yes.
especially in
Yes.
more
Yes.
easily. I have seen that. Yes.
We can have a good conversation around that. We used to say with my father, who was a depression, baby, my sister, brother, and I used to say, does he have money or
Mm,
doesn't he have money? He had money when he wanted to have money.
yeah.
But you could not walk in the house without him asking, how much does this cost? How much does that cost? How much does that cost? So it made us a little crazy. So I've done a lot of work around, my own relationship with it. And it's something, again, that we don't talk a lot about. And particularly for somebody who I know you've been very financially successful, for you to share with us that it's still an issue, right? Because it doesn't matter how much you make. It's how much my father used to say, and again, he didn't make this up. I think this was a Scrooge thing, but if you make one penny less than you earn, life is good. If
Hmm.
you spend one penny more, life is difficult. So
Yes. Yes.
we yes, we can talk some more about it because it's a
It's
really,
a
really
it's a
great
big
topic.
subject. Yeah. Yeah. And now, it's I can recall there were times when I felt I got my tax bill. So, how come my tax bill is so high? And people around me would say, "What are
Because you made
you?
money.
What are you, Meshuggah? Look how much you made. You have a problem paying tax? What's the alternative? You don't want to pay tax, then you're not going to make any money."
Yes, I have a lot of my father's favorite sayings around all that stuff. Just be happy. Be happy you're paying taxes.
Yeah. Other people would love your problems.
So tell us, in addition to the money issue that you've had to that you're still, that's still present in your life, what were some of the other issues that you had to really kind of look at and make some changes?
Um, trust. Trusting in people.
Mm,
I have seen, you know, uh, so with my father in particular in his business, I've seen him get burnt a couple of
mhm,
times
mhm,
when he was much younger, and I saw him being extremely trusting, a man of high integrity, high
mm,
self-respect for others. Um, and I see in hindsight that he was taken advantage of,
mm.
and that is a cause of pain.
Right,
That I don't even, can't even say he allowed it to happen to himself, but somehow it happened. It's a fact.
right.
And so. now I have a sense um, about just trust, and
Hmm.
I'm always talking to myself and thinking about
Hmm.
the subject of trust with people,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
because our society does run on trust to a very, very high degree. Uh, there's nothing, there's nothing that says we need to stop at a red light. And but we do. It is,
Hmm.
yes, it's the law, but we also trust that people are going to stop at red lights and stop signs. But it doesn't
Hmm.
necessarily have to happen. So we trust that we can go and we can use our dollars, and the dollars have value. That is,
Hmm.
we don't know what happens tomorrow if that disappears. So our whole society operates on trust, and when we get burned, what do we do? Do
Right.
we do? Yeah, that is a question that I struggle with and I deal with myself. It's like,
Well, and again, trust coming from a psychological perspective and a developmental perspective
yeah,
is the most basic
mm,
of our relationships to the world.
mhm,
And when we talk about conflict, okay, and conflict in businesses and conflict in relationships, and
mhm.
that's the first thing that goes is trust, right? I'm afraid to open up my mouth. I'm afraid to say this. I'm afraid to say that. When do I do this? So again, as we grow and we develop, it's in addition to the money one, which is also a trust issue.
Mhm.
Um, it's trusting ourselves, trusting other people, trusting. We have to have our own code in a way of how we operate within that. My ex-husband I always used to say, he would always say no before he'd say yes. He always mistrusted before he trusted. I kind of come from the other direction. I trust before I mistrust. Um, and at the same time, when you say your father allowed it to happen, in some way he did, perhaps because he was not aware. It's all about awareness of some of the dangers and some of his own guardrails, perhaps that he didn't, kind of even think about to put into operation. But at some level, we do. We have to put in our guardrails. And coming again from my background as a psychotherapist, um, when we go back to the feelings, the head and the heart, our body gives us all kinds of information.
Yes, yes, that's and there's also societal, I mean, cultural factors at play here. We happen to
Hmm.
live in a high trust society in the US,
Hmm.
but other societies and cultures in the world are not like this. In
Yeah.
fact, I would say the majority are much lower trust societies. Um,
So, given the
in
fact that you'd spent so much time in Asia, how did that show up just on this subject?
in China, there is no trust.
Mm.
The people do not trust their government. The government does not trust the people. The people do not trust companies. The people do not trust the quality of the products that they buy and the ingredients in the food supply.
Mm.
It's a very, very low trust society.
So, again, for you being, coming from the US, how did you accommodate to that? How did you deal with that?
I should have learned very, very quickly. It's like being thrown into the jungle.
Mhm.
I mean, animals, I don't think animals trust each other. Animals have instinct of survival.
Right,
There's not a sense of trust in the animal kingdom.
right.
So when you're thrown into that environment, um, you, you adapt very quickly. Otherwise, you are lunch.
Yes, you were eaten.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So when we talk about coming around with what we were saying before in terms of stress and living in a place where there's not a lot of trust, it would seem that you're always on alert.
Uh, I I am on alert. I am. And it's probably helped or not helped
How
by
so?
by
How so?
training by training in martial arts for for 25, 30 years now. And I still train. And I just got another black belt in
Mm.
karate 2 years ago at the age of 61.
Well,
Uh, and so you know, the role of situational awareness is it's constantly a factor in the way that I think and that I see the world. So in the end, I think that for me it's a good thing, and I try to
right.
teach that. I teach it
Hmm.
to my kids, to my family, um, and even with clients that I have, not in the martial arts context,
Hmm.
but being situationally aware. And in the
Yes.
world of sales, for example, I mean, I've worked with many, many clients, and many sales leaders.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, and in the business of sales, in fact, sales, we say sales 101. Remember, we have two ears and one mouth for a reason.
Hmm. Right.
Use,
Yes.
use the gift.
So again, Andrew, from what we're talking about in terms of being aware, being alert, situationally aware, trust, all of these issues that we've touched on, the good news and the bad news, right? So I would want to be next to you in a dangerous situation. That situational awareness that you would have that's probably developed a lot more than most other people. And people, depending on families and where they come from, a lot of times that sense of alertness is is operating all the time,
Mm.
right? And at the same time, what's the downside of that?
The downside is a level of stress. I mean, I am not a chill California guy. So I'm totally a type A
Hmm.
uh, personality that is a stress case, and my family tells me this all the time. And
Yes.
so, it's a subject of conversation, and I am aware of that. I'm constantly pushing. It's hard to relax. I do not sit still. I go on vacation. My vacations are, I mean, I trek in the Himalayas for vacation.
Right.
Yeah, I'm I'm training for the Tokyo Marathon. I'm running in March. So
So I'm
that's
laughing.
the downside.
Yeah. So the name of my company is called Mastery Under Pressure.
Mm,
It's being able to manage
that's
in high
perfect.
stakes situations,
Yes.
right? How to
Yes.
be calm, cool, and collected. Because one of the downsides of being in that constant state of stress
Hmm.
is the first thing that goes is the prefrontal cortex,
Hmm.
this part of the brain, which is our thinking brain.
Hmm.
It's our executive branch. So when we need our leaders to be in calm, relaxed, in charge energies,
Hmm.
so that everybody else around them can know that the leader is in charge and that we're all in good hands. If we're in a state of high stress and the adrenaline is running through the body and running through the brain, we can't think clearly,
Yes.
right? So um, that's one of the downsides, right?
Absolutely. And without the proper training,
Right.
it is very easy for that stress and that the endomorphins and the adrenaline to get in
Yes,
the way
that's right.
of thought.
Yes.
Absolutely. Uh,
Yep.
I'm with you on that.
Yep.
Mastery under pressure. And it does take training and
It
practice
does take
and
training,
awareness.
and that's the thing, that I started this whole program, this under the hood and what's going on underneath and these
Mhm,
patterns, because without training,
mhm.
we just react.
Yes.
We just do what comes naturally. We do that instinctive what animals do, and we just react,
Yes.
right? So in order to, and this is for everybody. This
Yeah.
is not just high leaders and high stakes. This is for these kids that are running around with guns. This is for anybody that can't control their impulses. This needs to be trained. I always say that good mental health is not a natural sport, it's a learned sport.
I love that expression. And I mean, knock on wood for me, the martial arts training
Yes,
focus has been a lifesaver.
it has been a lifesaver.
But for
Exactly.
the training part, the use of breath, for example,
Right.
the simplicity of waiting, breathing, breathing properly,
Mhm.
not and being conscious of not just reacting and
Yes,
just taking a moment, a split second
yes,
to pause and
yes.
think.
Right.
Yes.
So I'll just kind of throw this in because of the conversation. This is from my TEDx talk that I did 2 years ago.
Hmm.
And this was a little mantra that I made up just from what you described. Cut, just stop,
Hmm.
stop
Hmm.
for that moment. And then, you know, go through and what's going on. Just take that moment and then choose to respond. So it's cut, reframe the situation, and then respond. And so you're a perfect example.
Huh. That's really quite coincidental. That's great. I love that. Cut,
Yeah. Reframe,
reframe,
respond.
cut, reframe, and respond. Yes.
Notice the thoughts and the feelings that are running through your body. Okay, I get it. And then choose. And then I end my talk with, wouldn't it be amazing if everybody would just learn to cut, reframe, and respond?
And I love that. And perhaps another word for respond is not even if respond um is synonymous with react, I would
Mhm.
say it should not be synonymous with reacting because we want to try not to react.
Exactly. We
We,
want to
we-
choose. You choose
yes,
your response. You
yes,
choose how I want to deal with this.
yeah,
Right?
act
Mm-hmm.
proactively. Don't
Yes,
react.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I didn't get through hardly any of these questions because we went off on something that was really interesting. And not only interesting, but you are a perfect, beautiful example of, and I'll just give you my sense of Andrew, you're a thinker. You're also, high stress and all that, but you think about these things. You think about them consciously. And that's what makes the difference between those of us that are just reactive all over the place and a true leader that really I know my stuff. I know, the things that I'm good at. I know the things that I'm not good at. I work at this. I do the best that I can. I'm not perfect. All those pieces. And yet you have been extremely successful and continue to be and live your life in a beautiful way. And so I thank you for that.
That's very kind.
Truly, 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 truly. So we have a couple more minutes. We're actually out of time, but we'll stay on for a couple minutes or two. And if Bob, thank you for being here, and Adriana, anything that you want to ask Andrew, make a comment, go for it.
I'll ask you something. It just popped into my head. Um, Given that I can relate to some of these things about the stress and where you're moving. Um, what do you want to be remembered for? I don't even know if you have kids or anything, but or married, but what do you want to be remembered for?
Hmm.
I always find that as a good way for me to focus in terms of making decisions and choosing the right path. Um,
Mhm.
just curious. And you don't have to answer that, I guess.
No,
No, it's a
I
great
love
question.
the question. You've been around the block once or twice. I have, Tina has. So we d- we think about these things when we're beyond our 20s and 30s.
Right, right.
Um, I am married. I'm married for 26 years. My daughter's 24. My son is 20.
Oh,
Um, we are extremely close. Um, I still, my wife and I still love each other and are best friends. And I
Mhm.
feel so blessed. I want to be remembered for being a good guy. I like I showed up, I was there, I was a good husband, I was a good father, I was a good friend, I was a good member of whatever community that I'm part of or have been part of. I was a good son. Probably, yeah, I'm,
You're a mensch.
yeah, it's
no,
this
Mitch.
simple stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Cool. That was a great question.
it was,
The last question that I had is kind of what advice would you give to your younger self, given what you know now that you didn't know then?
um, my younger self was, and I think many young people are outward focused. Like the
Mhm.
world is out there. I am going to conquer the world. I'm going to do something. I'm going out there. And um, I would give my younger self advice to say, okay, wait, yes, the world is out there. You're going out in the world, but it's you. It's you. Don't forget who you are. What is important to you? Know yourself. Learn about yourself. Be in touch with yourself. Um, Figure out what's important for you and what you want to focus on, and what makes you happy. So it's a symbiotic relationship. Don't forget about yourself as you go out and do what you're going to do.
It's a great way to end because the way that I kind of look at it and talk about it, you drive everything. And if you don't know you, you don't know your blind spots. Everybody else knows them.
Yes,
I always say, wouldn't you like to know them? Because everybody else knows them. So,
yes, that's nice.
yes. Andrew, wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. I know how busy you are. And
Oh, total pleasure.
this,
I don't usually have these
I
inward-looking
know.
conversations. It's
I know.
uh,
I have a lot of people who say, I'd love to be on your show and I could talk about this in my business and I could share that. And I said, you could, but that's not really the
right.
purpose of this particular podcast. And it all comes together because everything that you do is a manifestation of who you are. So,
Tina, you are masterful. You are a a black belt in what you do. So I congratulations to who you are, what you do, and how
thank
you
you.
do it. It's masterful. So
Thank you.
loved spending this time with you.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Adriana and Bob, for being our guests with us live. And everybody else, I hope you get to watch the replay because it's definitely worth it. And thank you again to Andrew Miller. His information will be, with the replay. And this is Mastery Under Pressure, sponsoring the podcast of Under the Hood. And have a happy and a healthy and a wonderful new year. Bye for now.